purposeful non-congregate shelter, and we're looking to do more of them.
California has been dealing with homelessness for decades, and Sacramento is no exception. We just left a tiny home community for the homeless, and it is the first of its kind in the Sacramento area. But is it too little, too late? In this video, we're going to show you guys exactly what's going on in Sacramento and if the city is doing enough to solve the homelessness crisis. We've been living in California for 7 years now. And of those 7 years, we lived in Sacramento for about 6. The amount of homeless individuals we've been seeing in the streets has increased dramatically. When we first moved here, there were about 5,000 individuals living in the streets. And as of 2024, we already have about 10,000 unhoused individuals living in the streets. Now the city is facing a lawsuit from the city comptroller because he feels that not enough has been done to curtail the issue of homelessness in Sacramento. It's telling that housing is a major cause of homelessness out here in California because the head of homeless services himself got evicted twice from his own home, and now he has decided to move to Indiana with his family because he can no longer afford to live in California.
Back in 2017, when we were looking at homes, they were much more affordable back then. Not to mention the interest rates were reasonable.
Yeah, you know, our interest rate when we first purchased our home and we put a deposit down was 4.75% or 4.675%. That was in 2017.
Yes.
Right. But by 2020, the interest rates were even lower. However, in 2020, that's when all the prices of housing began to climb even faster. And it is all across the country, but
because of the demand.
Because of the demand. All across the country, but specifically, like if you're looking at California and homes already cost $600,000, for them to go up even a few percentage points, they're going up by tens of thousands of dollars.
Absolutely.
Right? I remember when we were looking at our house, at the time we were looking at other homes, and we saw homes that were 2,000, 3,000 square feet that you could purchase for $300,000, $400,000.
Yeah.
Right? But not anymore.
What an incredible time.
Not anymore.
I remember those days.
Exactly. If you guys look at our videos that we've been posting about the cost of living or the cost to own and rent out here in the Sacramento area and the greater Sacramento area, you'll see that we looked at a home that was 1,300 square feet.
Ridiculous.
And it was just under $600,000 for that house.
It was ridiculous. Like, how can people afford to live, especially if you're a single income earner? You know, if you're a nurse, say you're a single parent with kids.
Yeah. It's getting harder and harder. And this is why I do give it up to the Kaiser Union, you know, the California Nurses Association, is because they fought for our contract at a time when we needed it the most. And, you know, we got the highest increase in our salaries in decades, if not since the inception of the union. And what a lot of people don't realize is, I talk about this all the time, but the raise that we got of 22.5% is not the entirety of everything that we've gotten. Because that's the raise that we get every year on our anniversary date. Yes. Or actually not on our anniversary day, but on the same day every year we all get that raise, right? So at the beginning of the year, for example, in January, we all get this inflation adjustment raise that is tied to that 22.5%. But if you're a nurse working at Kaiser, in addition to that raise, you get an anniversary raise. And that's up to a certain amount, right? So like if you are at step 5, you've been with Kaiser for 5 years and you started at year 0, at that year, they don't increase your rate anymore until you get to year 8, right? Because of the steps. But regardless of that, this is why I always talk about how I love working for hospitals that have unions.
One of the A&Ms that I worked with, he moved from San Francisco to Elk Grove, and he works with me in Kaiser South Sac. He said that the staffing is much more of a bigger issue in the Bay Area because the nurses there cannot afford to live and buy a house within the hospitals that they live in. So out here in Sacramento, you know, if we really desperately needed a nurse, they can just drive 3 minutes and get to work. Yeah. Now these nurses that live in the Bay Area, they live at least an hour away. So whenever they needed to be fully staffed or somebody calls out sick, whatever, they cannot get nurses to come in or stay because they live so far out. I got a comment saying, why do they pay nurses so much at the Bay Area? This is exactly the reason why. They cannot afford to live there. They'd have to commute so far out just to work in the San Francisco.
Yeah. And, you know, I have proof of this because actually I've dealt with a nurse recruiter who has asked me many times if I can tell nurses that they have positions available in Redwood City, in San Jose, in San Francisco, because they're having a hard time hiring nurses. Not many nurses are willing to apply to work in those areas because they're expensive to live in. And in addition to that, they're losing a lot of their nurses to the Sacramento area, like
Right.
Roseville. And there's 3 major hospitals in the Sacramento area. And many of the nurses from the Bay Area move to these areas to work and live in these areas. But this is where the cost of living rise goes into account, because since so many nurses and so many people like tech workers and professionals are moving from the Bay Area to the Sacramento area, it's increasing and raising the cost of living. The home prices have increased dramatically since we first moved here. Being that in 2017, when we first moved out here, there were around 5,000 homeless individuals living in the streets. And the latest numbers, like I mentioned, are around a little bit over 9,000, just under 10,000. So we're gonna be driving in an area here of Sacramento where there are more homeless individuals than you would see around other parts. During the winter months, November, December, January, and February, you actually don't see as many homeless as you do during the summer months. And as you can see right now, this is what it looks like as the weather starts to get warmer. This is the norm around this time of the year. And when we were driving around this winter, we didn't see it as much, and we thought maybe the city was doing something about solving the homelessness crisis. But that's so far from the truth. It has not happened yet, and it doesn't seem to get any better. It doesn't seem to be getting any better. And if you know anything about Sacramento, you know that the temperatures during the summer months go upwards of 100 degrees. So a lot of these homeless individuals have to find cooling shelters, and that's what the city does for them. Because just imagine living out here when it's 110 degrees, it's unbearable. I mean, we used to live in New York City and the humidity was crazy. It was, even when it's 80, 90 degrees, it feels like 100 degrees. But here it is typically 100 degrees or more. And that is the norm for the Sacramento area. We're currently on North B Street. This is an area that's known for having a lot of homeless individuals, lots of encampments, and plenty of trash just everywhere.
It's by the fire department.
Yeah. But it's also an area that doesn't have many residences. You don't see a lot of homes in this location here. Most of this is just, like you said, there's a lot of warehouses and industrial buildings, but not many homes. The thing that I hate most about California is taxes. A lot of our taxes are supposed to be going towards solving the homelessness crisis. And this is what we see.
I don't know what they're doing with our property tax and our income tax, but yep.
It's definitely not going towards fixing the homelessness crisis.
Okay.
So this is the juxtaposition between the homelessness situation and what's going on in this area, because there's a lot of development for high income earners, because the only way you'd be able to afford to live in any one of these places is if you can afford it.
You can see the disparity through here. Look at this, got a playground, new development. Are these apartments or are these homes? This looks like an apartment complex.
These are all apartments, yeah.
Like luxury apartment complex.
And you have RVs. And if you saw a previous recording that we made, there was this road in Roseville called Roseville Road that stretches for miles, and you can see hundreds of RVs parked along that road. And I guarantee you, these apartments, even a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, is probably going to go for a minimum of $2,900 to $3,200 per month, minimum, because we're located right next to downtown. This is basically downtown Sacramento, and it's located next to the Amtrak. It's located next to the Kaiser Hospital, that's actually the Kaiser Clinic, and all of the courts that are in this area, as well as like the financial district in downtown Sacramento. Oh, it says here in this article that shortage of housing is also causing a lot of homelessness, because people are willing to pay more for housing, those who can afford it, which drives up the cost. And now other people who don't have access to those houses anymore are living in the streets. We're in the downtown area of Sacramento, and we're going to show you what it looks like for all of the businesses that used to exist in this area that are now boarded up. Yeah, there you go. Look at that. Businesses that are no longer open because of the homelessness issue in this area. There's a lot of unhoused individuals that break and enter into establishments or harass the patrons that go shopping in this area. And I think the pandemic is what made matters worse, because businesses could not afford to stay open when they couldn't sell to individuals that had to enter their establishments in order to buy their products, their services. I want you guys to see how beautiful this street is. It leads to the Golden One Center, and right behind us, you have the IMAX Theater.
Like I said, so much wasted potential. It's really quaint. It used to be very lively. Kind of reminds me a little bit of New York City.
But look at all these boarded up businesses. They've had to close down. Right now, you don't see as many homeless individuals as you normally do,
it's looking kind of rough.
At night, you definitely do. There's this new bill that was recently introduced in California state, which aims to ban homeless encampments in the state of California in locations that are considered sensitive community areas. And this bill is gonna prohibit people from sitting, lying, sleeping, or storing, using, maintaining, or placing personal property on city streets or sidewalks. And I don't know how far this bill is gonna go, but if that does happen, like, where are the homeless individuals gonna go? I mean, right now, they are living in the streets, in the sidewalks for the most part. If you think about LA and Skid Row, they all live on the sidewalk. So is that considered a sensitive community area? Probably not, because there's too many of them living there. And I don't remember, it's not really a residential area, right?
No, it's not.
It's not a residential area, so I don't know.
It's more commercial, I would say. There was a lot of shops there.
Yeah. So I think because of that reason, they're not gonna prohibit, homeless individuals in that area from having a homeless encampment, or they're not gonna ban homeless encampment in Skid Row. But places where there's residential housing and schools, churches, things like that, they probably will ban it.
So we're gonna get very polar opposite responses to this, because obviously, if you live in a neighborhood, you have kids, you want to feel safe in that neighborhood. This is coming from someone who's had our house broken into in a middle class neighborhood, and after that, of course, it was kind of traumatizing because they broke into our garage, and my son and I, he was only a year old at that time, we were sleeping on the first floor. So, do you want to live in a neighborhood where you don't want that to happen? But at the same time, you don't want these unhoused people not to have a place to stay.
Yeah. It's such a tough position for everyone to be in. And I will say I've had experiences where, I've spoken, because I work in the emergency department. I've spoken with unhoused individuals, and I've asked one of them in particular. I remember I had a conversation with him, and I asked him why he was homeless, and he told me it was by choice. He used to live with his parents, and he was about 34 years old. He said he used to live with his parents, and he left their house because he just didn't want to follow their rules anymore.
They want that sense of freedom. Really.
And there was a situation out here in Sacramento where they were trying to find housing for individuals in a homeless encampment, and many of them turned down the offer by the city to give them the housing that the city was trying to provide for them.
They have very strict laws when you are staying at a shelter, because I've been in a shelter myself, and very strict laws. You have curfews, no drugs, no alcohol. If you leave, you have to sign out. So, I mean, if you live in a home like that, it feels like you're a little child. So obviously they're not gonna like that. And these are adults, or, mostly adults, I hope.
Yeah, there's a lot of teenagers actually that are homeless too, though.
Yeah,
apparently
really
California has the largest population of teenage homeless individuals of any other state.
That's really sad, honestly.
Yeah, but California also tried to introduce another bill, or put it in a measure, to increase our taxes again to address the homelessness crisis, when many Californians feel like they haven't done enough with the money that we've already allocated with our previous tax dollars towards the homelessness crisis. So it seems like every election cycle, they just want to continue to increase the taxes to solve this homelessness crisis, And the homelessness issue just keeps getting worse and worse and worse.
I'm just trying to figure out where this money is going.
Yeah. And the thing about politics and politicians is they line their pockets with all of the money that we end up paying in tax dollars. They misappropriate our tax dollars. It's just, yeah, I don't even know what to say about it anymore. It's left all Californians speechless.
When we first moved here in California, babe, I used to think that the reason why we saw less unhoused individuals in New York City is because, we have the infrastructure. I remember my classmates used to tell me that these homeless people would live under the subway system and had plenty of space to kind of hide. And I think, which is honestly true, but when you drive around Sacramento and the greater Sacramento area, there's so much untouched land. I don't know, I'm talking about even in Sacramento alone, when we were just driving to that tiny home community, we were driving around plenty of land that we could use, and not far from the city and the downtown area itself.
And you also need to keep in mind that the land out here in Sacramento is much cheaper by square foot than it is out in the Bay Area. So for them to say that they can't afford, or there's too many roadblocks that are in the way, and they're unable to build the housing that's needed for these homeless individuals, it's absolutely absurd. I am sure they can find a way, they're not doing it. And another thing is that there's so many regulations in California, because just for Kaiser to build that new building, that new hospital in downtown Sacramento, they've had to jump through hoops just to get the rights to build on that land, because too many different entities own the rights to the land. And in addition to that, they need to get so many permits, and they have to wait for inspectors. It's the worst. And anyone who's a developer will tell you that California is one of the worst states in the country for development to happen.
Yeah, for a very progressive state, it's not very progressive at all in that term.
With that being said, if you guys want to know what the job market looks like for nurses in Sacramento and in the Bay Area, and why Sacramento is the toughest job market for nurses, then you should watch this video that we made last week.